Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good day to all of our panelists. Thank you so much for being here. I want to follow on a little bit of what Senator Fisher was beginning to discuss. Last December, a company in my state, Dyn, Inc., in Manchester, experienced a series of distributed denial of service attacks. Since Dyn directs global internet traffic for some of the top social media, email, and streaming services, the impact of the attack, as I'm sure all of you know, was felt throughout the country. Perhaps most unsettling about this attack was that hackers turned everyday internet devices into a force multiplier that targeted Dyn, a very sophisticated technology company. So this isn't just about consumers being disrupted. So, Mr. Rosenbach, if groups of criminal hackers can mobilize the Internet of Things to help advance an attack like this, then clearly countries like Russia and their teams of state-backed hackers could use the Internet of Things to mobilize a far more catastrophic attack. So what are your thoughts about what we can do to prevent against state-sponsored attacks of this nature?
Yes, ma'am. So this is a great example of where the Internet of Things has a dark side that the government needs to play some role in, because you can't expect a firm like that, if it were the Russians or the Chinese or the Iranians, who are also very active in putting together these bot networks, to be defending itself. So it doesn't mean that it should always be the Department of Defense. In fact, we should probably be the last people you call in, because we want to be very respectful of civil liberties and the constitutional tradition. Right. But there needs to be a hard conversation about when the government is going to defend a firm like that in New Hampshire, because otherwise the investment they would need to make in defending themselves will put them out of business. Yeah. That's not the role that they should be in. There is a role for government when it comes to state-based attacks.
Thanks. And Mr. Barlow.
Well, Senator, I think one of the other challenges we have to recognize that was very unique about the Dyn attack is that many of the devices were used were everything from everyday nanny cameras. However, they had the default user IDs and passwords on these devices. Yep. Now, it's incredibly easy to write a script to go scan the internet looking for these devices and then check if it's, literally if the password's still admin and password. Mm-hmm. One of the challenges is the bad guys can use these tools to not only scan, but to go try to log into these devices and then identify them for potential inclusion in their botnet. The good guys can't do that, because the minute I try to log in with a default user ID and password, I'm breaking the law. Yeah. Now, I'm not saying I want to go enter into these devices, but I certainly, whether it's working with government or working with other private sector entities, I want to know where these devices are so that we can potentially notify either the manufacturers, right, who probably have some responsibility here, notify the end users of where these are deployed, or worse yet, just identify these devices so they can be blacklisted so they can't be used in an attack like this. Okay. And that's a critical area where the threat has evolved past the good intentions of the prior law.
Okay. Well, thank you. I wanted just to take my last minute or so to talk a little bit more about bots. I am referencing a McClatchy report on this from earlier this week, that the FBI is investigating Russia's use of bots to blitz social media and try to influence the public discourse surrounding the 2016 presidential election. So if the allegations are true, it shows that Russia has made use of a powerful tool to disseminate misinformation and fabricated stories on truly a mass scale. The University of Oxford study found that on Twitter during the period of October 9th through 12th, 2016, there were over 850,000 tweets from suspected bot accounts. It would seem that some of the emerging technology discussed today could be used to counter the proliferation of Twitter bots and the Russian misinformation campaign. So again, I'll start with you, Mr. Rosenbach. Can you please take a minute and discuss how we can use these technologies to address this problem?
Yeah, we have experience in this in the government from a bot-based campaign that the Iranians conducted against U.S. banks several years ago.
Yep.
So the technical solution to taking out bot networks is not actually that difficult, but one, you need the willingness to do it. You need to make sure that it's transparent under the law, and then you have to work with a lot of international partners, because the bot network, on its face is located in many different countries around the world. But that is where there's a role for the government to play, because otherwise it won't happen, and you can't expect one private sector firm to counter the Russian government's effort to influence our elections.
Thank you. Anyone else want to comment? No, then thank you very much, and thank you, Mr. Chair.